Hi, I'm Andrew with Infinity Cutting Tools. I have Jordan with us with General Finishes to talk a little bit about the different finishes that are available and that we're carrying here at Infinity Tools. So Jordan, why don't you give us a little overview of the different types of finishes General Finishes makes?
Sure, thanks for having me, Andrew. We have both oil and water-based finishes from General Finishes. We've been in business since 1928, actually celebrating our 90th anniversary this year. And so we've been making oil since the 20s. We just got into water in the 90s. Since we've done that, it's actually taken over more than half of our sales, and we are one of the foremost companies on the water-based side at this point. However, we do still have our great oil-based products as well. So to get into a few of the products here, the stains to start, we have three varieties of stain. So we have water-based dye, water-based pigment, and gel stain, which is an oil-based product. The oil-based gel stain is a wonderfully easy product to use. So things like vertical surfaces, where you're worried about drips, if you're maybe doing touch-up or you're working in tight quarters, the gel stain is wonderful. It doesn't make a mess. It's the consistency of like kind of a pudding.
Okay.
So very easy to control, doesn't drip, and great colors in there. The Java Color gel stain is one of our biggest selling products, and people just love it. So when we look at the water-based side of stain, we have the pigmented wood stain as well as the translucent dye stain. So these two products are wonderful on their own. They're wonderful to use with one another. The pigmented stain will actually even adhere to an existing finish.
Okay.
So with minor prep, minor prep, 50-50 denatured alcohol and water, scuff with a Scotch-Brite pad, and clean it with that mixture, you can actually dry brush or brush on and wipe off that stain, and it will adhere to that existing finish well enough that you can brush on a clear coat without color pull.
Okay.
That's something that up until recently has been very difficult to achieve. We have done it with this specific product, the Black Label wood stain. The dye stain is really great for deep colors, for exotic woods where you want the grain to really pop, and your customers are big into the woodworking, exotic woods kind of stuff. So the dye stain is wonderful for that. It gives you great depth of color, really great chatoyance in the wood, and so it really produces a wonderful, wonderful finish.
So the dye stain is going to really bring out things like figure in wood, so curly maple or something like that.
Correct.
And it also comes in like a ton of different like crazy colors, like bright blue, bright green, yellows and oranges. So you can almost get primary colors with the dye stain, and it'll give you that really even color, right? When you use it on a piece of wood.
Well, exactly. It's a penetrating stain, so it's going to be, there are certain woods, the harder woods are going to give you a more even tone.
Okay.
If you use it on something like pine or a very soft porous wood, that's where I would kind of come back to the pigmented wood stain, because the pigment is going to sit on top of the wood, whereas the dye is going to soak in.
Okay. And so the wood stain is going to give us a look more like we're used to with just a traditional wood stain that we've all used. It's going to bring out the grain in a wood like oak. It's really going to make that grain pop. But it's going to leave the less porous areas with a little less color, right?
Right, exactly. It's going to sit on top and be a little bit more even. And the same would apply to the gel stain. That's a pigmented based product as well. So it's going to give you a great color. It's going to be nice and even, and probably perform a little bit better on the blotchiness when it comes to those more porous woods.
Okay. Now, we've got oil base and water base. What does that mean for me when I go to use a clear coat on top? Because I want to put a clear coat on all these, right, to protect them.
Correct.
So if I use the oil base, do I have to use an oil base top coat, like an oil base poly, or can I mix and match these?
Yeah, it's a common misconception that you cannot use a water base over an oil or vice versa. You actually can with our products. So we've engineered these products to have top-notch adhesion. So if you want to use an oil-based stain because it's just the perfect color, You can certainly put a water-based top coat on for speed and whatever reasons you have. You do just want to wait a little bit longer for that oil base to dry before putting that water-based top coat on. So we recommend at least 24 hours. 48 would probably be ideal.
Okay.
And then our water-based top coat, the high performance, will adhere to that oil-based stain,
Okay.
and you will be off to the races.
Very cool. So it's just a matter of letting it fully cure, and then you basically put any of the clear coats that you might want to on top.
Yeah, and on the other end of that, if you want to use a water-based stain, again, I would give it, you don't need to wait as long, but I would wait probably at least 4 to 6 hours for that water-based stain to dry, and then you should be all set to put an oil-based top coat over if you prefer to do it that way.
Okay. So really, you can use pretty much any of this stuff together and not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Now, you also have an exterior finish, the exterior 450 clear. What stain would you recommend using if you're using it for outdoor applications?
So if we're looking at outdoor applications, from what we have here, the gel stain is going to be the best recommendation. It's a pigmented based stain. Again, the consistency is very easy to work with. You're going to get great color, and we use UV stable pigments in that product. So once it dries and is top coated, it's going to last outdoors for a nice long time.
Okay.
Again, it is an oil base, so you do want to wait that 24 to 48 hours before applying the water-based exterior 450. Once you've waited that time, you're completely ready to go. Another great point on this gel stain is that it will adhere to fiberglass as well.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a garage door, a storm door where you want to do a wood grain natural look, the gel stain again is going to be a great product for that.
Very cool. So you could do kind of a patina or a faux finish look on on just about any kind of fiberglass or wood product.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Correct.
cool.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, what about all these other? We've got like 3 different types of clear that are interior specific clears, and I know everybody's probably familiar with a regular polyurethane, and that would be like your Armor Seal. But what about something like the High Performance or the EnduroVar? What are the big differences that you might see between? Because these are both water-based, right?
Correct.
So if you have these, what's the biggest difference that I would see if I'm used to a polyurethane like the Armor Seal? Mm-hmm. What's the advantage maybe to going to a water-based top coat?
Sure. So when it comes to water-based top coats, traditionally there have been a lot of misconceptions, and I think it got a bad rap when it first came out in the early 90s. It was not generally a very high quality formulation. So a lot of people shied away from it because they felt that it wasn't durable or it didn't perform well. We have removed those disadvantages to the water base at this point, which is why we're so successful with it. Our formulations have brought it up to a point where there's no real disadvantage from a point of view of water resistance or chemical resistance, overall durability, things like that. The biggest difference you're going to see using these two products, or using an oil versus a water, is number one, the oil smells. It takes longer to dry, but it does give you that natural ambering.
Okay, so I've got a sample here with the different sheens, and this would be for the Armor Seal, so the oil-based. But it looks like oak. Mm-hmm. So we've got oak samples here, and we can see that they've got that nice amber color that really brings out the natural look of the wood. So that's something you would expect from an oil base, but in a water base, it usually is just kind of really, really clear and almost doesn't apply any color to the wood.
Right. It's generally what we would call water clear. So if you put just high performance on a piece of wood, it's going to look very, very similar to how it looked unfinished, except that it will have a sheen on it.
So here's a sample with High Performance on it, on maple, and it looks just like almost just a plain piece of maple. Here's just a raw maple board. You can see it really doesn't apply hardly any color to that wood at all.
Right, and so in order to find a happy medium between those two, what we did is actually engineer this EnduroVar product.
So that's
going to be kind of halfway in between, where it's a water-based product, so it dries quicker, it doesn't smell, It also gets very hard. It's a good durable finish, but it's formulated specifically to give you a little bit of amber color closer to what your oil product would be. So if you hold that up next to the high performance, you can see a clear difference on maple, where that's going to bring out your grain a little bit, especially on exotics and highly figured woods. It's going to give you something very similar to that oil look that everyone loves so much. Now, one thing that I would point out with the oil products is that they wipe wonderfully well. Water-based generally does not wipe very well, and the reason being is it doesn't build very quickly. So if you are a person that really prefers to wipe on your finishes with a rag, the oil base is generally going to be the way to go.
Okay.
But if you're comfortable using a foam brush or spray equipment, the water base is kind of the next generation of wood finishes.
Okay. If we're using like a bright green, blue, or yellow dye stain, that high performance doesn't change the color, so it makes it a lot easier to get a really vibrant color and know the color you're going to get after the fact.
Is going to last, exactly. And the other end of that point, I would say, or the inverse of that point, is that this actually will mix into the high performance very well. So I believe you did a little work on these cabinets here, and this was the high performance with a little bit of medium brown, I think?
Light brown.
Light brown.
Yep.
And mixing it in, you can see you get a great even color on these cabinets, and it's a one-shot product at that point. Once you mix it in, you did, what, 3 or 4 coats on here?
Yeah, I think on all the cabinet doors we had about 3, maybe 4 coats.
Sure.
But it ensures that if we just sprayed high performance, again, we'd be like with this really blonde maple color because our cabinets are maple. But because we put the dye stain in...
Just a little bit, yeah. Creates a great toner, very even color.
Made it a lot easier to get just the right color.
Exactly.
Which would help with matching existing. Say you need a new door, I break the door in the shop, I need to make a new one.
Yep. And
I would be able to kind of match that color, even though it's 5 years later.
Yeah, and even if you stain a door where you think it's going to be close, you put it up, it's a shade off, that's where the toners come in big time too, is you can go ahead and go over a stain with a toner and just adjust it a shade at a time. So you can get very, very exact with your color matching, which is, as you know, a pain.
Yeah.
To say the least, generally.
Yeah, I know. I used to work in a cabinet shop, and our finish guy, that was his magic. He kind of almost never showed anybody what he did.
Right,
But he could nail colors, and toning the clear was a way that he was able to bring the darken it just a little bit, or bring it back from a little too red or a little too dark, something like that. He could adjust it, but that's probably what he was doing, right?
Absolutely.
Was just using something like a dye stain to tint his clear, and then once he got it right, he could just spray the rest of the clear, and he was done.
Yeah, correct.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the last product that we have to talk about today is the milk paint.
Okay. So
first of all, milk paint is a little bit of a misnomer. We don't actually use milk protein or whey protein, anything like that.
Because originally it was made from like milk solids, right? Like you evaporated the milk and mixed it with pigments, and that's how they made
alcohol
milk paint.
And all kinds of fun stuff. We use it as a marketing term for our paint, but it does not contain whey protein. It is actually a 100% acrylic product.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that this milk paint is actually interior or exterior capable.
Okay.
So you can paint your Adirondack chairs, throw them outside. It doesn't even require a top coat. Now you can use one. This milk paint only comes in one sheen.
Okay.
So it's kind of a low satin.
Almost flat, right? Like
yeah,
a really
somewhere between a
not
flat
not
and
a lot
satin.
of gloss at all.
Right.
Okay.
So if you do want to bring the sheen up, or you want it to be maybe more wipeable, to if you're planning on things getting messy, or if it's near a kitchen, something like that, you can use the exterior 450 as well as the high performance over the top of this. Now the Endurovar is only recommended for either raw or stained wood. But there's really no reason to use that over a paint anyway, as you're going to get color shift as you would with an oil. Yeah,
you would want to have that super clear top coat, because that's going to maintain, because the milk paint comes in a ton of really great colors.
Very vibrant colors, yeah.
Okay. And you also, we have available, I guess, like a mixing deck for the milk paints?
Yeah, so we have 6 stock colors. And so we took those stock colors and we created this mixing deck to give you a much wider variety. So people can look at these decks, they can decide that they like any color in the deck, and it'll give them the recipe right on there in a part system. So for instance, 1 part buttermilk, 1 part Snow White gives you a much softer yellow than straight buttermilk. And that makes it repeatable. So if you do a project, you love the color, you want to come back and do it again, you know exactly what you use there. So this is a great tool for people, especially DIYers, that they don't want to go get a custom tinted gallon every time. They want to just mix bits and do it their own way.
You're using a small project, maybe you just need a little bit of paint, or you're doing a little accent color on something. That would be a really great tool to have.
Absolutely.
And really get that exact color that you're looking for.
Yeah,
Very cool.
That's what we created for, and that just came out last year.
Very cool.
So that's also a great product. But other than that, I can't emphasize enough the fact that we are, at General Finishes, not owned by anyone. We're completely independent. The reason our products do so well and the reason that they sell so well is that us being independent gives us the freedom to use the best raw materials available, the best quality. So we are a quality conscious company over price point to a degree. And it gives our chemists and everyone the freedom to use the best stuff available.
Right.
So we don't cut corners. We make these products to last and to be the best on the market. And there's no one with a deeper line of water-based finishes than General Finishes right now.
Very cool. And I know there's always a lot of confusion about water-based, and I've been guilty of it myself. I'll just use the oil base. I know it. But when I did this project with the cabinets, Jordan was actually here, and he suggested I try the water-based products. And what I found was I was able to finish all these cabinets really quickly because of how fast the water base dries.
Right.
And actually, it levels. We ended up spraying all of our finish with an Erlex 5500 spray station, like a lot of hobbyists would use in their garages. And we got great results with it. The finish leveled out really well. I didn't have any issues with drips or runs or anything like that. But it just dried so quickly. So I was able to do multiple coats on all my parts in a day.
Yep.
Whereas if I had used an oil base, I would have been waiting days, one coat a day for a week kind of thing. Whereas I was able to pretty much finish everything in a matter of a couple of days. So I think that's probably the biggest selling point.
No, absolutely. The speed involved with water-based, you're going to be able to recoat within about an hour versus with oil, you're waiting about 24 hours. So when you're talking about getting things done, the water-based is really the way to go. It's really the future of the industry. And you look at automotive finishing is already largely water-based.
Right.
It's a very technology-driven industry, and they're early adapters of new technology, so they are already largely water-based on the automotive side.
Right.
So if that technology is good enough to go on your car, it's probably good enough to finish your wood projects as well.
Not to mention, you'll have to worry nearly as much about dust and stuff. I mean,
Right.
very few of us have a spray booth to spray our projects in. It'd be great if we did.
Right.
But if the dust is only going to stick to it for 10 or 20 minutes versus 2 or 3 hours with an oil base, that's a huge advantage. It means you're going to get nice, smoother, clear
absolutely.
finishes, so you got to do less work after the fact.
Yeah, that and the self-leveling with the water. Even though it's not as wipeable, it does self-level better than the oil. So it's a very user-friendly line of products.
Great way to get really professional-looking results.
It is.
Well, Jordan, thanks for coming. We appreciate you
Thanks
coming
again,
out and
Andrew.
talking with us, kind of shedding some light on the different projects.
Oh,
you guys
absolutely.
carry.
We're excited to be here with Infinity, and thanks again for having me.
Thanks.